Call this meeting to order. Let's please rise and salute the flag.
Is the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thanks and welcome everybody. This is the July 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Town of Lake Luzerne Zoning Board of Appeals. And we have one item on our agenda tonight, which is a public hearing for the proposed cell tower on Hall Hill Road. Before we start, I want to remind my fellow board members that the issue at hand is the variance, setback variance, 500 feet from the dwelling is required. They're proposing 296 feet. Okay, so that's the issue at hand. Construction of the cell tower is not an issue for us. It's not our responsibility. So keep in mind so that we can stay focused with that. When we get started, we'll briefly talk about the revisions to the application. As most of you folks know, the original application came in last summer, I believe it was July, and since then, AT&T has made significant changes to the physical layout of the property. So we decided that definitely needs another public hearing. That's why we're here tonight. So same with you folks, please try to stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish today. That said, I will open the public hearing, and first issue would be for Karen, our CEO, to read the public announcement.
Public hearing, please take notice that pursuant to the zoning ordinance of the Town of Lake Luzerne, the Zoning Board of Appeals will conduct a public hearing on July 22, 2021 at 7 p.m. at their regularly scheduled meeting. The meeting will be held at the Municipal Complex, 739 Lake Avenue, Town of Lake Luzerne, to hear comments on the following. Area variance 2020 AB-7, applicant AT&T Mobility Corp. Property owner Donna Baker, parcel number 286.1-20.1, residential countryside zone, RC, 16.87 acres, location 60 Hall Hill Road, Lake Luzerne. The applicant has applied for variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for relief from Article 6C1 of the zoning ordinance of Lake Luzerne, requiring a separation distance of the tower from all residential buildings and building sites of 500 feet or 1.5 times the height of the tower, 202 feet, whichever is greater. The monopine facility will have a total height of 135 feet. The nearest residential dwelling is 296 feet away. A copy of the application as well as other supporting documentation are on file with the Office of the Zoning Officer and may be reviewed by interested members of the public during normal business hours, Monday through Thursday, 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. All parties in interest and citizens will be given an opportunity to be heard in respect to the proposed variance at the public hearing. Persons may respond by letter, appear in person, or by agent, or participate via Zoom. Access Zoom by computer at zoom.com or by phone at 646-558-8656. The access code for Zoom is 902-687-9764. Karen Putney, Zoning Officer, Town of Lake Luzerne, P.O. Box 370, 539 Lake Avenue, Lake Luzerne, New York, 12846-518-696-2711, extension 4, published July 15th.
Did we get any correspondence from
No, I've had
anybody?
I've had no correspondence, and I've had someone from the public that's been in my office a couple of times, but he's here at the meeting tonight, Mr. Arnold.
Okay.
So no, I have no written responses.
Okay. And the APA side of it is in motion?
Yes.
Process.
Yes.
Okay, what I will do is summarize changes in 2 minutes or less, and you can expand on that if you'd like. With us here tonight tonight. From the AT&T group is Andrew Leja. Am I pronouncing it right? Leia. He's an attorney with Barclay Damon. And Kim Reback, I think the best description I can give is she's kind of like the project manager. Basically, when the original application came in, according to our zoning laws, the tower would have needed 2 variances. The public and the zoning board put together concerns and things we'd like to see done differently, and asked a bunch of questions and so on. As a result of that, AT&T significantly redesigned the layout of the project. The tower is being moved. I didn't make a note of it, approximately 200 feet southeast from its original location. And that will put it approximately 507 feet from the Sampson residence. And it'll put it 296 feet from Baker residence. What that means is one of the variances is no longer needed because it's well within the sideline setback requirements. So that variance is no longer needed. So the only variance that's still being requested is the variance to put it 296 feet from a dwelling as opposed to 500 feet as called for in the town code. When we get started, when you come up, if you please speak into the microphone and sit at the table or stand at the table so that the recording can hear you. And if you would, state your name and address so we know who you are. Okay, that said, is that, you want to add anything to that brief summary?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was fine. Nothing to separate.
One more thing before we get started. This is a public hearing. It's not a discussion. Difference being, what we want to do is hear what you have to say, take notes, okay, and then we will digest that and take that information forward at our next meeting. We may, board may have questions. On Zoom is the consultant that we hired. He's attending the meeting via Zoom. We hired him to review the application, especially the technical stuff that us Luzerne folks are not qualified to evaluate. So he is on Zoom with us tonight. William Johnson, RF engineering consultant. Okay, you all set? Okay, so who'd like to be first? That's your name, okay?
Ron Arnold, hear that?
Sure.
55 Hall Hill Road, across the road from the site where the tower is going to be. Okay, zoning, why do we have zoning if they can just roll into town and do whatever they want? Seems like we're restricted as far as what you guys can do, what we can do. Protect ourselves and protect our neighbors, protect ourselves from ourselves, protect our neighbors from any wild ideas we might have, like stuff we want to do on our property. I can't go down here in front of Gene's Bed and Breakfast and start a pig farm. Doesn't fit in that neighborhood. Any more than this thing fits in our neighborhood. Okay, the proposal's in violation. I'm not going to read that because Karen's already just read it. It's in violation. Here we are, round 2. All the information you needed to deny this the first time around we had, but it didn't happen. We did it from previous meetings. Our health concerns are of no importance to this board, the FCC, or AT&T. When I'm done, you're going to have all the information you need to deny this application without considering our health concerns. Say it again, not considering our health concerns, even though that's very important to us. Don't base your decisions on that. See, you all have copies of this. blueprints and the application. I'm gonna be referring to that a lot. Glad we have a set here that I had to do all this from memory, so no page numbers in here, so we're gonna have to, I'll show you where it is, what I'm talking about. You'll have to find it in yours. Okay. Anytime you can't find what I'm talking about, let me know and I'll show you where it is. So, before we get into that, I want to share a picture of a cell tower site where I used to live. Well, pictures of that, I'll explain what you're looking at. This is where I lived. I used to live at number 1 right there, 18 Sanders Drive, which is right down here in Queensbury. The houses there are numbers 1 through 8. Those are my neighbors. Cell tower over in the lower right-hand corner, right above the north symbol there. Scale is down there. It's 2 inches equals 100 feet. There's 2 roads here, Sanders Drive. Dead end road, that ends down there at number 3, Bill Sanders' house. The other one is Westcott Lane, comes up here and that ends at that cell tower, that's about 500 feet long. When I moved out of there, it was in 1975, that tower wasn't there then. It's been there, I'd say 25, a minimum of 25 years. It's taller than the tower that they're putting across the road. Number 1 was my mother's place, Barb Arnold. Number 2 is Dick and Dale Clapper. They lived right next door. Their house burned down 5 years ago. Number 3 is Bill Sanders. Number 4, Howard Cornell. Number 5, Red Bell. Number 6, Tina Straught. Number 7, Penny and Barb Celeste. Number 8, Don and Muriel Clark. Most all of these people that live there were retired, so they're spending a lot more time at home and around the house. If you turn the page over, there's 11 names on there. 3 sets of husband and wives. Numbers to the left of the name depict which house they lived in. The star after the name means they died of some form of cancer. There's 2 names on there that do not have stars on them. Bill Sanders is in a nursing home right now, in tough shape. He's going to have a star. Red Bell had a cancerous brain tumor removed. Knock on wood, he's doing good. To the right of that is the numbers in feet, how far away from that cell tower they live. And the only thing they have in common is most of them were retired and lived there. They all had different drinking water. We sold my mother's place last year. The water was tested, no issues with the water. So I don't know what's going on there. And just like COVID, you live next to somebody, you catch cancer. I don't know. Didn't happen overnight. It's taken 15 to 20 years to get to this point. Telecommunications Act of 1996 is 25 years old. Based on short-term study. That's what we do. 25 years down the road now. We got to get our heads out of the sand and pay attention to what's going on. This is a bill that's in New York State Assembly right now. It came out in 2019, sponsored by De La Rosa. In 2020 now, it's picked up 7 more co-sponsors. Long story short on this, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It deals with advanced cell towers on school property, on schools or on school property, and within 1,500 feet of a school. There's already a cell tower there. They have 180 days to terminate contracts and remove the tower from the property. It lists justifications from doctors and researchers and whatever as to why this thing is going like this. The other countries right here are ahead of the curve on this than what we are here. France, Sweden, Germany, England, they all have rules put in place for these cell tower placements, way ahead of us. not here because money and big business run this country. Nobody's looking into any of this kind of stuff here. I'm gonna read the England one. England has documented cancer clusters near cell towers. I'm sure as I'll call that a cancer cluster near cell tower. Not ruling on our health concerns, I just wanted to be aware of that. That, cover of this right here. There's the second one up from the bottom there. Site layout revisions will significantly reduce or eliminate the visibility of the tower from all vantage points as depicted in the attached photo simulation. Okay, and that's BS. All the photos taken from Hall Hill Road have been altered to show the tower more concealed than it actually will be. As we stated in previous meetings, we don't care what this thing looks like, 9N, Hollow Road, Painted Pony. If you don't like the looks of it, don't look at it. Keep going. We don't have that option. It's right here in our front. You're gonna make a decision here tonight that impacts the rest of our lives, our kids' life, and their grandkids' life. Town was notified. They put up balloons to simulate the position of the height of the tower. Balloons were there all day, and not one person could come and view that. Okay, I'm gonna go to the photos they took from Hall Hill Road. Down in the right-hand corner, there's a number 4 on the photo. 665 feet. It's viewed from southeast of Hall Hill Road. Has balloons in the picture.
Well, hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Everybody find the one that's viewed at 155 foot, 175 foot, 655 feet southeast from Hall Hill Road. 55 millimeter lens. It has balloons, the arrows pointing at the balloons. 2 balloons there.
Okay.
Now this was when the tower was going to be 155 foot tall. It's no longer that way. It's 135 feet tall. The upper balloon at 175 feet is there to just help get this thing up in the air, pull the weight of the string, get the thing raised up. The top balloon's 175 feet. The balloon under that is at 155 feet. 20-foot difference between the 2 balloons. So if the 135 foot trailer or tower, you drop down about that same space, would be the 135-foot tower. Note the orientation of the balloons to the tree right there, the immediate right, where the arrows are. See the space there? Now visualize just dropping that down. That should be where the top of this 135-foot tower is. Go to the next page. Is a simulation. Next picture there. Simulation photo, 135-foot tower, same location, same spot, 55mm lens. See the arrow? Where the type they have the tower. Note the position where the trees were, the other picture. They moved it over, tucked it around behind that tree. Everybody seeing that? Go back to the other picture, see where the trees are. Now they got the tower moved to the left, and behind that tree. Okay, the next picture, same spot, same view, 85mm lens. Okay, that just blows it up more, so it shows the tower way over behind those other trees, so without you won't see it. Okay, the next picture. These are the 400 foot from the site, due southeast from adjacent driveway. 55mm lens, photo number 5 in the bottom right. Same thing, it has 2 balloons in it with arrows pointed to them. Same thing there, you drop down about that same space between the balloons, that's the 135-foot mark. Note the orientation of the trees there. Go to the next picture. This is a simulation of the tower where it is. There's that tree, they got the tower moved right over here behind these other trees. Okay, same, the next one, the 85mm lens, it pulls it up even more, it's further over to the left. You hardly can see it. Plan shows 66 trees to be cut. So the trees they tried to hide the tower behind most likely aren't. This type of deception, how do we know they're only going to cut 66 trees? They're even going to follow the plan steps forth there. This is why it was important for somebody to come and look and see real time without a biased decision. What it looks like. Nobody came. All right, we're going to go to the blueprints now. Okay, this is a page I'm on. It shows the trees and coming in.
I think the bottom right hand corner should say like CA or VA 100 or.
Yeah, CA 120.
Thank you.
Up in the left-hand corner, there's a little block there, it says, no, after completion of the geomorphic study, a blasting plan will be prepared and submitted to the EPA for approval. I know the terrain there, I had the blast to put my celery in halfway down my driveway. No houses there at the time, so it wasn't an issue. Got one length of well casing in my well for surface water, the rest is all rock. The entire area up there is rock ledge. You see the rock in the yard like this, by the time you dig it out of there, you can park the truck. 99% chance they're gonna have to do some blasting. I got a question for legal. If they blast and that changes that underground water table and we lose our water, who's liable for that? The town for approving this, AT&T for doing it, or both have a part?
Mr. Arnold, I appreciate your question, but I'm unable to answer that this evening. I will denote your question, and at the appropriate time, I'll address that in front of the full board if it's represented. But this is a public hearing where you can present your information to the board.
Okay. We're gonna be coming back to this. I'm gonna go through the steps here that you're supposed to be going, get this out of that planning and zoning laws in New York State. That's what you guys are using, following. Is that right?
Not in this case.
Not in this case. Area variances. Making this determination, the zoning board of appeals shall take into consideration the benefit to the applicant. If the variance is granted, is weighted against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. So I guess we throw the last part of that out. Okay, so numbers, the first thing you're supposed to be looking at. I'll break it into two parts. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood. Okay, the character of the neighborhood now, it's a quiet, heavily wooded forest area. The project requires extensive excavation work, clearing, tree cutting, which will open this area up dramatically. Increasing noise coming from the diesel generator, which is going to run for 30 minutes at a time. Also, the visual aspect of this doesn't fit with our current surroundings. Second part. Or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. Okay.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Mr. Arnold? Please keep in mind that what's before us.
Mr. Chairman, before you go down that path, let me just advise the board to allow the public to comment in any capacity, anywhere they want, in any direction they want.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not guide him in his remarks.
Okay.
This is his presentation. He has full autonomy to present whatever he wants to present. I know what you're going to say, but I just want to present.
All right. Sorry I interrupted you.
BA 100. Is that how they're listed here? Yes. Okay. BA 100. Right in the corner. Back up. I'm going to read that. Proposals in violation of Article 6C1 of the zoning ordinance of Lake Luzerne, which states the tower must be located 500 feet or 1.5 times the height of the tower, whichever is greater, in this case 500 feet, from a a residential dwelling and building site. Granting this variance causes a restriction on bordering property. To the north, it will protrude into the boundary, at the boundary line, 315 feet. Has to get 500 feet away from the tower. To the east, it protrudes onto the property 229 feet. If you make a 500-foot arc around that tower, it forces a restriction on several acres of land on that property. Doesn't matter if the property owner says it's okay, I don't mind. I'm not gonna put a house there anyway. It restricts the parcel, which is a detriment to nearby property. Okay, question 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Yes. Last meeting, you talked about the honeycombs, all these towers around, how they're all connected together and everything. So if you gotta put in another tower to get out around a mountain, out around somebody's house, then you add another tower. To get you out of all that problem and all the problems we have now. Okay, so another coverage map with all them colors and things on it. This does not address all the spots and downs. So after this tower's in, there's gotta be another one for down here. Three, whether the requested area variance is substantial. The distance required from a dwelling or a building site is 500 feet. Baker's house is 296 feet from the tower. That's a substantial difference of 204 feet. Does not matter if she's in agreement with it or not. The fact is she's in violation of the zone. Also, the tower will be 185 feet from a building site to the north, 271 feet from a building site to the east, both of which are substantial distances. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Project requires extensive excavating, clearing, tree cutting, opens this area up dramatically, which increases the potential for wind damage, soil erosion, and washouts. Well, Paul Hill Road, anytime after a rain, the sand they put on the shoulder of the road is up on the road and halfway washed out into the 9N down there. This road they're putting in comes around, goes over and down a hill. APA doesn't call it a wetland, they got another name for it, there's a big wet area down there. So the gravel and stuff they put in this road is gonna come down into it. Okay, if you look at the blueprints. again, CA 100. We got a 30-foot right of way coming in for the roadway there. Around down. All Hill Road's 22 foot wide on the blacktop is measured in front of my house. Okay. You add about 4 foot of shoulder on each side, brings it up to about 30 foot wide, same width as the area where leasing go down. Driveway going into that slated to be a 12 foot wide gravel base. Underground power cables starting out on the left side of the road, go down the road a ways, it crosses over to the right side. Which requires more clearing beyond the 12 foot part they're going to have. There's 66 trees slated to be cut. Several of those are outside of the leased area to the north, which will cause more exposure to the houses there. Follow the roadway in where it goes down to, turns to the compound, just before the curve. They got a temporary clearing site there. I don't know what, if they have to widen that out, or they're gonna park equipment there, or what, but a temporary clearing. I don't know how that works. They're gonna stand the trees back up after you clear it. It's gonna be cleared. Another spot like that just past that. Yeah, there's two 12-inch culverts gotta go in there. There's water drainage issues. If you're driving up Hall Hill Road, a 30-foot area up through there, it's clear. If you visualize that, when you get to Baker driveway, that's gonna look like Hall Hill Road, but turning right out through there. That's a wide slot that's gonna be cleared to get out in there to get down to this. Compound area is 20 by 46. CA 110. Yeah, they got a 100-foot leased area out around that compound area. And coming down that roadway here, you drive into the compound, they got an area out in the front here. It's 15 feet wide. I don't know if that's a parking area or what, and then down the side to the left of it, there's a double gate going in there, that's another area. So the total area that's gotta be clear cut for this thing is 41 foot by 61 foot. With that thing there. And there's several trees to be cut inside and outside the leased area, which opens up that area dramatically. You go to CA 130. Kind of hard to see here. It shows the trees. Got a little legend up here for the left. Following page CA 131, list of species of trees and what's got to be cut has a little darkened in triangle on its side there. There's 66 of those. That's what they propose for cutting the trees. Which does have an adverse impact on physical and environmental conditions in the area. Number 5 is was the alleged difficulty self-created? Both parties involved know before entering into this contract that this doesn't comply with the zoning. AT&T signed a lease agreement, putting themselves into this position, needing a variance. So this issue was self-created. Can't go down here to the pig farm, buy the house next door, and then come to the town and say, I gotta have a variance now. Put my pig farm here. I know it doesn't fit there. I self-create that myself. Here's an article. June 16, 2020, was put out by Christopher Bolts. He's a lawyer with Tucker Law. Title of the article: Federal Telecommunications Act does not trump local zoning law with respect to placement of cell towers. Court cases in here documented and stuff where tower companies sued the town because they were denied with the variance process, and the town won the case. These are defeatable, even though the FCC says you can't use our help, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can do it. I took elevation readings at the end of our driveways coming up the hill. 907 feet, 925, 926, 933, 934, 948. On top of that, you would add the height of our houses. Some are single story, story and a half, 2-story. The average of all that is mid to upper 900s for elevation. Average. Elevation of the tower at the base. CA 500. Tower zone to the left there. Elevation of the tower at the base is 845.6 feet. The array of 6 antennas is going to be mounted at 126 feet at their center point. The antennas are 8 foot tall, so the 126 foot mark can be 4 foot above it, 4 foot below it. There's another array of antennas going to be put down below those ones. Do the math on all that, that puts our houses in a direct line to those antennas. Signal that's coming out of those. That can't happen. Town is looking for forward-thinking people to give input on updating a new master plan. I don't have a crystal ball, but in 15 to 20 years, I don't want to see Hall Hill Road for my family's needs or my neighbor's family's needs on a map like this. Stuff doesn't occur overnight, it accumulates over time. There's enough evidence out there now. Look at this stuff. Not a bunch of tree huggers up there against cell towers. Get them away from the houses. They're safe. You've been given all the information you need without our health concerns to stop this. Get it done. Thank you.
Who would like to be next?
You minutes to get warmed up.
Roberta, almost at Ellsworth, Vandersea, 80 Mile Hill. I wasn't going to speak, but I changed my mind. And something piqued my interest. First of all, I know that I'm a huge reader. I've read a lot. I'm sure I don't know nearly as much as you do about FCC being able to override a denial of a town zoning board. But I do know that the FCC can deny it, or can override it, I should say, if there is proof that the tower would provide coverage over a significant gap in coverage. There's no definition by the FCC of the square miles, square footage, whatever, of what a significant gap in coverage is. I would like to remind the board that at the first meeting where AT&T made their initial presentation, a different attorney, I forget the guy's name, made it sound like this cell tower was covering all the way to Lake George, all the 9-inch corner, all the way to Lake George. And one of the, I believe it was one of the zoning board members, even questioned it at a subsequent meeting. They, made it sound like it was covered all the way to all the way to Lake George, when this is really a 2-mile radius. I drove to the edges of the 2-mile radius. And there's probably no coverage for other cell carriers. I seem to be like a magnificent coverage for maybe 25 to 30% of the area. I myself, before Tom Reed bought the property behind me, when Tom Brennan owned it, I had full permission from him. He's an rodeo guy with me. So I ride my horse out there. Double H hadn't closed off their trails to horse people yet. I would ride a mile out at least. That's pretty much as far as you can go without hitting Double H from my house or, deciding to head up to Prospect Mountain. And I would ride that far comfortably because my cell phone had bars. You don't want to be out in the woods by yourself on a horse without cell phone without bars. One of the edges of the radius is up Old Stage Road. I had 2 to 3 bars at the radius at Old State Road. I had to go downtown, basically everywhere. Depending on the weather, I think people do have trouble. Coincidentally, on the property that dropped down, the property behind me. And a very short distance between the edges of the ends of Gage Hill Road. That to me is not a significant debt coverage. The other thing I learned when Ron mentioned blasting, I just retired from a 41-year career from an insurance company. Many years of that were in management. The last 21 was on the management team of a claims office. I've seen a lot of homeowners claims file where blasting was within sometimes 1,000 feet of someone's house. And they suffered home damage, cracked sheetrock, broken windows. Ground movement is not covered by your typical insurance policy. So I spent a lot of time trying to negotiate with people with blasting permits. Come on, they didn't have this before. Sending out engineers to prove that damage was not pre-blast. Last year's earthquake, I don't know, I can't remember when exactly it was. But there was an earthquake locally, and you woke up, it sounded like a big bang. You guys remember that? From that, which was not even anywhere really near us, I have a crack in the sheetrock underneath my living room window. I'm very concerned. I'm 500 feet from this thing, approximately. I have a dog who's terrified of thunderstorms. I have 2 horses that are used to people, target shooting within, my back end of my father's house. They're used to bangs. Blasting is completely different. And I know you guys are the ones that issue blasting permits, but I just want to express my current concerns to you. People might say, we'll take your dog and your horses away. No, that's not up to me to protect my property from someone else blasting and to have to evacuate, go to that trouble for me. So those are my concerns. And I can't think of anything else to say. You'll probably be glad of that. Nobody else has something to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Allison. I live at 17 Hall Hill Road, right at the bottom. I'm aware that the issue tonight is the setback, but I'm willing to make this appeal tonight and at any other meetings necessary to convey my concerns. I hadn't planned on reading this letter because I thought it was part of this, but it wasn't. On April 4th, I sent a letter to all of the town boards, Mr. Marino, Karen, and to the APA because, and it was in reference to this AT&T cell tower project. I said, to whom it may concern, I'm writing this letter because I do not know how to convey this information in a better way. At the last zoning board of appeals meeting, they did not allow public comment. The last planning board meeting was canceled. On Monday, March 22nd, 2021, a representative of AT&T conducted a balloon flight test in a new site on the same piece of property on Hall Hill Road. The representative, Kimberly Revick, stated that she had invited all the town boards to the test. I contacted many of you and found out this was untrue. I also found out that those who were invited were advised against it by the town attorney. Forgive me, this is new to me, but I did not understand that advice. I was under the assumption that the town boards were in place to look out for the best interest of the town and its residents. If this is not the case, could someone please let me know the function and purpose? I appreciate all of the elected people and the appointed members who put in their time and do their jobs. I just would like some clarity on those jobs and where I go to get information. At the balloon test, Mrs. Revick indicated to neighbors that the tower was now a done deal. She also said that the towns and individuals could not win against AT&T because AT&T has more money and can afford better lawyers. I'm not disputing the lack of coverage in the Lake Bernard area. I know there is approximately a 2-mile gap there. Now, when I wrote this, this was when the second site and the new tower was going to be 155 foot. So I said, what I object to is the now proposed 155-foot monopole going up on Hall Hill. If AT&T has so much money, as Mrs. Reddick indicated, then perhaps they will consider putting a shorter pole on Hall Hill and then find another site between there and Prospect Mountain. 2 shorter poles would be less obtrusive in our area. A 155-foot pole is going to stick out, especially in a predominantly hardwood area. The base of a pole that tall will have to be at least 40 to 60 feet in diameter. As a result of my encounter with Mrs. Reddick, at this time, I spent 2 weeks doing extensive inquiry into cell tower sites and the process of approval in New York State. Some of the information I have gathered is concerning, and I would like to express those concerns and inform the various boards of that information. I would like to know if AT&T conducted a transmitter test for RF propagation. And if so, did they provide maps that prove the 155-foot is indeed necessary? So that's not an issue now because the tower site was moved. Did the town offer AT&T property to put the pole on? Then it wouldn't have to be in the middle of our neighborhood. And the town could benefit from these. Does the town know who is paying for the tower? Is it being funded by the state? Was the site on Hall Hill properly surveyed to ensure there was no evidence of indigenous settlements? You can see where I'm reaching because I'm fighting for my home. Was the site surveyed properly to ensure it would not interfere with any of the protected bird species in our area? Bald eagles, pileated woodpeckers, or any of those species, they're all protected under the Migratory Bird Act. At an earlier meeting at the town offices, I asked if this tower was going to be a 5G tower, and I believe it was Mrs. Reddick who assured me that it would not be a 5G tower. I would like the town to get that in writing. Through my research, I have found that this is likely an untrue statement. It is highly unlikely that a company would use old technology on a new installation, and if so, it would not remain that way for long. Has the town asked for a maintenance schedule? I have found that often these poles are not maintained unless the town or municipality asks for a schedule and asks for regular reports. The recommendation is for quarterly inspections with reports. I would request that this be in writing and that the stipulations extend to any future owners of the tower. In conjunction with the maintenance of the pole, is there a provision for who will be responsible for deconstructing the pole as the technology becomes obsolete and the pole becomes unnecessary? The town and its residents should be aware that it is regular practice for AT&T to procure the site and install the pole. Then the pole is sold and up to 5 different carriers are added to the pole. That means 5 more utility trucks and crews adding to the traffic and the noise. I suspect the insistence of the extended height, and again, I know this isn't an issue now because it's been moved. Before a final decision is made, the neighbors request some input on the appearance of the monopole, the camouflage and sound attenuation options. Since then, that was in April, I have some more information to share with you and a plea. And I know, again, that this is only about the setback, but where else do we do this? And I'm sorry to bore you, but I'm speaking to you as fellow members of the community. Some of you may have been born and raised here, others have moved here. All of you must, like us, value the beauty and tranquility of living in Lake Luzerne. I don't dispute the local coverage in Lake Bernard. I know there's a need. What I oppose is the location in our quiet neighborhood. None of us want this in our homes, with the exception perhaps of Mrs. Baker. Some of what I have to say will be a repetition of my neighbor's concerns, but they bear repeating. The first thing that really bothered me was that no representative was present for the second balloon flight. And Mr. Niles did respond to me as to why. Again, I don't understand, because if I were having work done at my house, I'd want to see it. I wouldn't just take somebody's word for it that they put rebar down before they poured cement. I would want to know it was there. And I think that's why we have inspectors do that before each step of construction. My second concern is now there was no balloon launch done for this third site. They just kind of did a simulation and we're supposed to take their word for it. Why not? Why wasn't there one? I don't know. And again, why were no community members informed of the balloon flight. It was just happenstance that we came upon it. Moving on, I'm concerned about the increase in traffic due to the maintenance vehicles. I really cannot stress how important the maintenance plan is if, or should I say, when the tower is sold. Who will be responsible for the maintenance and how will the town keep track of it? I'm also opposed to this tower location because of the potentially negative impact on the future sale price of my property. Who wants to live next door to this? If you hear nothing else, I hope you hear and consider this. At a prior zoning board meeting, you were all asked if you would want this in your neighborhood. Those who answered said no, and several of you abstained from answering. I wondered about that. And I wonder now, as new information regarding possible future development in our neighborhood has come to light. We neighbors are in opposition to the site of this tower. Our neighborhood is important to all of us, and most of us have spent the majority of our adult lives building and maintaining our homes. This is our home, not a business opportunity. We all see this installation as having a negative impact on the quality of our lives. The community is watching how you and to see how you represent us. Thank you.
Next. See any more hands up? Okay, then I will close the public hearing. Excuse me while I shift loads, folks. Our regular secretaries on vacation, switching parents, filling in, taking notes. Okay. We've got a lot of information presented to us tonight. What do you want to do? I feel like I need time to go back and read my notes that I just took. But that's just my opinion. I don't know if we want to generate more questions to the applicant or not. Right now, our tentative schedule is to discuss it again at our August meeting. That needs feedback a little bit. See. So.
It's just very different. This is, you know, in my mind, it's very much out of our realm of our normal, you know, variances. But pretty much just focused on one thing. So it is different. The information was good. There's a lot of information.
So several of the points that were made tonight were made previously.
Mm-hmm.
And they were presented to our consultant. We may want to go back and read his first. So that said, Jane, which way you lean to have some time to mull on it or discuss it more tonight?
Well, we see the rest of the board was discussing more of these points.
Well, my opinion is, I hear what you're saying, hear what everyone's saying. I know you have a need, but I also hear what's being said. And I've read and reread the reports. I feel like I don't really need to go back and read my reports again. That's my opinion.
Does that mean you want to discuss it more or less tonight?
If you still feel you have something to say about it, or you have some questions, you want to go on to listen. Yeah, my mind's, I'm pretty comfortable with how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I've read all the reports in great detail, as And he has. I don't need any more time to sure.
Well,
I can make a decision tonight. Read all the reports and I'm comfortable. I've made my decision, yes.
yeah, I need more time to digest some of this stuff. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. There's conflicts. In fact, some of the public conflict tonight. Coverage needed, some say yes, some say no. I just think I need time to let it sink in a little bit.
Is there anywhere, or can we talk about specifics in this right now?
I'm trying to find out if the experts online.
Yes, he is.
I think at this juncture, what you need to do is allow council an opportunity to respond to the public comments, and then have if he would like to do that, if he needs time to respond to the comments, then we can go into the next meeting and do that. Allow him time to do that, and then have the expert offer his opinion, some advice to you folks before we go forward with the decision. I think it's premature to, arrive at your decision tonight.
Yeah.
To hear from those two
Have
sources.
you received Mr. Johnson's report?
The first one,
No, the recent,
is there a second one?
Yes,
How recent is that?
July
July
15th.
15th.
No, I've not seen that.
We have the copy for you.
You have an extra one?
Yep.
Yeah, I have. There's a copy.
Mr. Johnson, would you like to address the board or the public?
I'd be glad to do that. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, give me 1 second. I'll go over to a microphone, okay? Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, I assume you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. If there were specific questions, I'd be glad to address them, or do you want me to run through some of the comments? I've made some notes on here that were stated tonight.
Yeah, go ahead with your own notes.
Okay, so a big issue, and this is a huge issue for a lot of people regarding the health effects. This is really not something that can stop a tower because federal law has precluded that. But I just want to point out to those who have that concern, because people in my family have that concern too, so I very deeply understand it. If there is a problem with biological and physiological effects in the human body, it's not because of the cell tower unless you're within a couple of feet of the antennas. The real problem is holding the cell phone to the side of your head. And people don't understand sometimes that a cell phone is a receiver and a transmitter. You're holding a radio transmitter in your hand when you're using it. And studies have shown that children's craniums absorb more electromagnetic radiation than do an adult's cranium. And some of that has generated some of the bills that were discussed tonight that are in the New York State Assembly and also throughout the United States and in foreign countries. It's a concern that, children should not be using cell phone technology, but the way to stop that is not to ban the towers. The way to stop that is to stop people from using the cell phones to the side of their head. So just one example is that the director of the cancer research facility in Pittsburgh had recommended years ago that his staff use a wired connection, not a Bluetooth connection, because that's also a radio transmitter, but have a wired connection. I don't know if you can see me, but I'm on image tonight. I'm wearing a wired connection that goes to my computer. It's not a Bluetooth connection. And that's the type of thing that was recommended. So I guess I would like to leave folks just with that understanding that it's the cell phones that are the thing that are of concern, and really it's not the base stations. The base stations, while they put out a lot of energy near the antennas, they are a situation like we're talking about tonight on Hall Hill Road. Those antennas are not shooting down at the ground. They're shooting out toward the horizon. And most of the energy is focused in that direction. So that's the last I'll mention, unless there are other concerns that you want to bring up. But please keep that in mind. If you're concerned about health effects, keep your cell phone away from the side of your head and away from your body. My report did address the issues that have to do with coverage. The new site is actually 47 feet ground elevation lower, and it's 135 feet elevation from that point. If you're out at the horizon looking back at that and were to compare the two sites, that would look like the equivalent of about a 47-foot reduction in the height of the tower. So instead of being 135 feet, it's less than 100 feet visually compared to the original site. It's still 135 feet with respect to ground elevation at the site. Many of the adjustments that were made to the present proposal, besides being at a new site, addressed issues that normally applicants address, which is the alternate sites. Because before a site is selected, the RF engineers for the service providers evaluate multiple sites to try to find where they should focus their attention and try to get leases and ground control at that location. In the present proposal, there were a number of alternate sites, and an explanation in the form of propagation plots was presented that show why those alternate sites really do not work as well as the currently proposed site. As far as alternate sites, unless someone knows a better site that doesn't require the variances that we're talking about tonight, but also doesn't produce the aesthetic problems that we're talking about tonight, this site looks like the best and the least intrusive of all of the working sites that the applicant was able to find. And actually, it was only one site of the alternates that had a chance of working, and it really did not provide coverage along Route 9N, and didn't provide as much coverage as the present site produces. And that's not because of power output, it's because of location, being able to see over the top of the hills and be able to project the signal down into the valleys is predominantly what the issue is in your area. So beyond that, other issues that we have talked about tonight, this is not a 5G tower presently, but the commenter is correct. You can anticipate that 5G is going to be prolific in the years ahead. It may not be on this particular site for years to come, but it could be there sooner rather than later, because 5G is the direction that most wireless communication providers are going to be able to provide the type of real-time services. One example of that is autonomous vehicles. Somewhere down the road, you're going to be able to tell your car where you want it to go, and it's going to be using the signals in real time that come from these 5G sites to be able to navigate and avoid collisions with other vehicles. So that's just one application. I believe the town code has provision for inspections and maintenance. I don't have that in front of me here, but that probably is an issue that the zoning officer would be able to address for you. I think that is the extent of the comments that I can make regarding the comments we heard tonight. Many of them are aesthetics, and unfortunately there is no way to make a elevated tower, even if it's disguised as a tree, disappear. The antennas do have to be above ground, and they have to get over the top of the existing foliage, and beyond that they have to get over the top of the terrain to provide the services that the service provider wants to provide. So it's unfortunate that there will always be this type of visual discontinuity, but in the bigger picture, perhaps they have done the best job that they possibly can to reduce the visual perception from a distance, even if not right up close. And I don't know of a better way to lower the height than what they have proposed to do. They've avoided some of the shadowing problems and have effective height lowered by 47 feet. So with that, I will give back the floor unless there's any questions from the board.
Yeah, I have one, and it might be outside of your expertise. Can you comment on this, on the issue of property values?
Yeah, that really is, that really,
accurate.
Yeah, that really is outside the area of my expertise, but I can tell you what I've heard. There have been studies performed in other municipalities, and some of these go back a couple of decades, so it's not necessarily the most current information, but perhaps Mr. Leah, who's here tonight, he may have some more updated information about this particular matter. But what I've heard is that studies were done on properties, comparable properties, where there was no tower before, and when a tower then arose, what was the sale value? And my understanding is that that has not affected the sale value. Some of the explanation I've heard, and I can't speak of this firsthand, so this is more hearsay than anything else, but it's what I've heard experts discuss, is that in the real estate market, there are perhaps 10% of buyers who will not buy a property specifically because they can't, or specifically because they don't want to be seeing a cell tower anywhere in their neighborhood. The other 90% are either of an opposite opinion or neutral about the issue. I taught for 31 years at Rochester Institute of Technology, and most recently in the last decade have been director of the telecommunications master's degree program. The engineers that were in my class studying exactly these issues regarding zoning and placement of cell towers, I asked them, how many of you would not buy a home because you couldn't see the cell tower? The answer was, every time I asked that question, 0. These are young people who are in their mid-20s, and most of them are engineers or were engineers and are going to become engineers. And the explanation for that is that they want to have exceptional wireless service. So if they can be near a tower and get that exceptional wireless service, which means higher data rates and better reliability of the communication system, that's where they want to buy their house. And these days, I do know this from talking to a realtor who operates in my area, that that's a question that realtors get asked, is how good is the cell service at this particular location? And depending on that answer, a customer may or may not want to go and see the house. So it's a real mixed bag of what people will perceive. But again, I'll remind you that it is the cell phone next to your head, if anything, that is the number one problem, if there is a problem.
Okay, can you stay with us?
Absolutely. I'm here if you need me.
I just have a quick question. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you.
Just 1 second. If you're going to allow the public to represent and continue, oh, no, that's okay. I just procedurally, I just have to make sure we do it right, that's all. If you're inclined to allow the public to continue to comment, then what I would suggest to do is reopen the public hearing. And Mr. Leah, you object to that?
No objections.
Okay, no objections by the applicant, so if you're inclined to reopen the public hearing to allow more questions and comments, you can do that. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. What I think we should do is finish this discussion with Mr. Johnson, and let Mr. Leah speak, and then answer the question whether we reopen the public hearing.
Okay, in order to let the public speak again, you'd have to reopen the public hearing, and Mr. Lee's already voiced that he's not going to object to that, so if you're inclined to do that, by all means.
All right, I'd like to hear from some other people before we go back to the public. Is that all right? Okay.
Should we address her concern, or I mean, is the public hearing just closed?
Well, public hearing's closed right now.
Okay.
What town
Well, we
council
can
is telling
we
me.
can reopen the public hearing.
Sure
second,
can,
right?
absolutely, that's.
Why don't we just, have him right there, we can take
That way she can just.
That way she won't lose her train of thought, too.
Okay.
I won't lose it.
I just want to give everybody a fair opportunity to participate, that's all.
Okay, we'll reopen the public hearing as of right now.
Ms. Allison, you have something to add?
I do. Regarding the site of the cell tower, you keep saying it's the best site possible. Best site for who? Does it always have to be the best site for AT&T, or could it be the best site for the people in the community?
Well, that's a good question. I was asked to evaluate the radio frequency issues that are associated with this site. AT&T examined a number of alternate sites where they might have been able to put a tower. They provided the technical documentation to show why those sites failed and were not able to be technically viable sites. So when I refer to being the best site, I'm referring to it from a technical point of view. Now, if if you step back from that, there's many issues that are involved with putting up a cell tower, and technical performance is just one of them. But if you don't have technical performance, then there's no point in putting up a cell tower. So that's really the first hurdle one has to get through. You have a site before you that provides the technical performance that AT&T is looking for. They have asked to put a site up at this location. Now comes the questions that you've asked: best for whom? We've crossed the first threshold of technical. Now comes the question of aesthetics, whether or not this fits with the community values and such. And the article that someone cited about the FCC doesn't trump local zoning authority is true. You have to understand what the parameters of that authority are, and what the FCC has trumped and what they have not trumped. And what they have not trumped is the aesthetic analysis. But if a tower has to go in, this is probably the least intrusive of the sites that I've been able to look at based on their material. If you're aware of better sites, again, the antennas still have to go up in the air. They still have to provide the coverage that AT&T requires at a minimum, or else the site doesn't fly. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not trying to dismiss any of the other issues, but and there are a number of issues. My focus is on the radio frequency issues, and that's the expertise I'm trying to bring to your board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See me there?
I think he pointed that way. Go ahead and speak. He'll hear you.
All right, you said that the more of the danger is in the cell phone, that those antennas are beaming out over the horizon. Our houses are on the same elevation as that antenna. What signal is coming out of that thing that's at the same level as our house?
Well, the Federal Communications Commission has established thresholds, and the assumption from the FCC is that if the exposure to a human being is below that threshold, then there is no biological or physiological effect. Now, I'm not a doctor of medicine, so I really can't comment on how that would all play. I just have to look at the technical information from the FCC, and they did have doctors who were medical doctors who evaluated that information, and these are the levels that they established. This particular site, and we don't have in the present documentation, I'm not sure that it was in the first presentation, but perhaps Mr. Leah would be able to help us with this. I'm not aware that there was a non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation report analysis that was done for this site. The FCC does not require it because this site meets all the requirements the FCC has established for precluding that type of analysis. But when these type of analysis are done for sites like this, even ones that are lower than this, that are down at 70 or 80 feet, the typical answer is that you provide perhaps 1 to 2% of the threshold exposure. So that means you still have 98% headroom regarding the FCC's threshold of improvement. That's a fairly substantial margin of safety. Even if the threshold is wrong, you're down at about 2% of what that threshold is. So I would expect if this site was analyzed that we'd probably come in at about those kind of numbers. It's possible that AT&T has already performed that analysis, just did not include that information with the proposal because they don't have to by law. But if they had that, perhaps Mr. Leah would be able to let us know that, and we could perhaps take a look at that report.
Sure. Since the door was opened on property values, also did a lot of research on that. I can't think of all the sources right now. The one that jumps into my head is the one done by, I believe it was the state of Pennsylvania Real Estate Realtors Association. And they found that, again, I'm trying to recollect from the dark recesses of my head here, 30% of the people, 10% of the people would not buy a house within 500 feet of a cell tower. And 30% would expect up to anywhere from 5 to 30% reduction in the sale price. I did my own little straw poll, and I asked 20 people, just offhand, without telling them why, would you buy a house with a monopine pole in the middle of a bunch of hardwoods that you can see when the leaves come off to when the leaves come back on, particularly within approximately 500 feet from your house? And half of them said, no, I don't want to look at that ugly thing for 6 months out of the year, whether I have good cell phone reception or not, if I'm going to buy a house in a rural area such as like I have. So I do believe there is an impact. And which, how mine can impact the town too. The value of my house goes down, assessment goes down, you guys get less money out of my pocket. So, but anyway, just wanted to say that since the board was kind of opened up on that statement.
Okay, yeah. Can we sort of keep the public hearing?
You
open?
absolutely can. You absolutely can.
We're having a constructive process here. Much better than it could be. So,
It's never an error to decide on open communication.
that's right, that's right. So let's keep the public hearing open, okay? Mr. Leah, you have the floor. Feel free to address any of the issues you've heard tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I would point out to the board a couple of things that were in the application materials already before you. In the original application package, Exhibit 4 goes through the standard that this board is to meet when deciding this variance application. It's the Rosenberg two-parts test. You've probably already read it, and if you have any questions on it, your counsel's here and he's well versed in it. So I point out that's Exhibit 4. Exhibit 11 in the package is where we go through your cell tower law point by point and demonstrate where we comply and offer information that's responsive to each of the questions in your code. So that, if you go through that, that might answer some of the things that were mentioned tonight for you, especially, for instance, a maintenance plan or tower inspections and the like. Your code requires that. We've already committed to meeting those requirements in Exhibit 11. So some of these things are already discussed and addressed, and you've probably already read them. So I won't just go through and revisit everything tonight, but if you have any specific comments based upon what you've heard tonight, I'm more than happy to with Ms. Reback to try to address them for you.
I have a question for you. In regards to one of the people, in regards to the possibility of damage from blasting. I know that there's lots of different ways of blasting nowadays. It's not like 30 years ago when you stick dynamite in a hole. Is there any kind of a process? Do you plan on blasting there? Or what's the extent of blasting involved? It is a very rough terrain.
I'm not an engineer, so I'm no expert on this. I have some experience with mining law, so I've dealt with some blasting issues in the past. I know that the topography up there is very shallow to bedrock, so it's likely that for a pole like this, typically they will drill down in and try to have to blast the hole with bedrock. As you noted, the modern technology, they use shape charges that direct the blast force in a specific direction. And they're very, very refined in how they do it. They don't stick a dynamite in a hole like they used to do before. But nonetheless, I believe that it's CA 120, the plan in here cites that there a blasting plan will be developed. And those types of plans are built around trying to ensure, one, that the blast radius is kept as small as possible, that the right charges are used. And typically, in many cases, if there's a need for it, they'll do a pre-blast survey of area foundations and compare that and keep that information and compare it pre-blast, post-blast to see if there's any changes and address those, if there are any changes, then address them at that time. But it's all part of the blast plan that is developed by engineers to be able to protect against the type of things that were mentioned, any damage to water resources and damage to nearby foundations and the like. It's all meant as part of this blasting plan to be addressed and protected.
I'll add to those comments. One of the last steps in my process, after a building permit was received and after the APA permit is received, is to actually do a geotech report. Every tower that is built has its own foundation design. The geotech drillers will come in and drill right at the point of the base of the tower. And based on that report, they will come up with a customized foundation for each tower based on the exact terrain and bedrock situation and soil situation that they find. In the multiple towers that I've done in the park, they do find bedrock pretty quickly. And in most of those cases, based on the height of these towers not being a huge structure, and you've got to remember that the structure itself is also very small in its base. It's not a big foundation. And they'll simply do a anchor right into the bedrock itself. So all those details would be provided and designed accordingly. I have not seen many situations where they've even done blasting. They're able to accommodate the height and the structural requirements of the towers just by anchoring directly into that bedrock.
What's a typical diameter of this foundation?
I'd have to go.
I heard 40 feet tonight. I know that's not right.
No, the base of the tower is probably 5 feet. It's really small. You're just doing a cement foundation right at the base of the pole itself.
I have a couple of questions. Hold on. Okay. On the drawing that I think it's Mr. Arnold was curious as to what the temporary flaring area was. You know what that is?
Obviously,
Shows little triangles.
obviously during construction, they need to create a wider path just for construction purposes. For instance, that clearance then would be brought down to a much smaller diameter just to accommodate a vehicle going down. So it's just, we need to show the overall space that's needed during construction, even though that can be brought down to a smaller diameter after.
Do you know off the top of your head if that area is included in trees that are scheduled to be cut?
The drawing itself identifies every tree.
Including that area?
Correct. So if there is a tree, that one drawing shows the location of every single tree and is marked which ones would need to be taken. And that's part of it.
I just don't know if the ones that are going to be taken, if that little triangle includes the ones that are going to be taken.
I can follow up.
This is CA 130. That shows the location of all the trees.
Yeah, I studied this, I studied that, but the little triangle he's referring to, where is it really?
It's a bump over it. It's probably gonna be a spot to push snow, isn't it? The two spots that are marked with special, one there, a large one, a small one.
Yeah. So there looks like there's maybe 1, 2, maybe just 3, this one and then that one.
Okay, so the trees,
Correct.
so that area that Mr. Arnold was referring to, the trees are going to be cut there are included in the trees to be cut west.
Yeah.
Okay, that was
Every,
That was
each
my
one of these
question.
numbers is a tree that was surveyed by a surveyor over multiple days, identifying the height, the species, the location. And this is something the APA requires.
So the trees that are Xed off in here for removal are located on that table.
This is the spot he's talking about right here. It's hard to figure out where that is here.
Right there.
Yeah, those 2 areas right there, yeah.
Thank you. 4G or 5G? Talk to me about that.
5G is obviously the latest technology. Just recently, is when the FCC opened up the frequencies for the 5G network. So very few carriers have a lot of 5G, and it's going to take a lot of work to implement. It's obviously starting in more urban areas. It's gonna take a lot of years before it gets out to some of these towers that are in these more rural communities, if it ever gets out here. We're talking years in the future.
And one of the reasons that's the case is because 5G operates on a different type of frequency, a shorter wavelength. The shorter you make the wavelength, the harder it is to penetrate cars, buildings, through heavy trees, etc. So 5G antennas need to be much closer to one another than 3G or 4G, much closer, which is why it's really starting in urban areas where it's easy to put antennas on every block. You can attach, these antennas are like pizza boxes.
They're small.
You can stick them to the side of a building, stick them to the side of a water tower, to anything, really, to a utility pole. You can put them all over the place because they need to be in much closer proximity to one another because the wavelength is such that they have very low penetration into the places. So before you see it on towers like this, you can put a 5G antenna on that tower, this proposed tower right now, but it won't really do any good to anyone unless you're very, very close to the base of the tower. You have to have, maybe Ms. Baker, the owner, could benefit from that, but almost no one else will. Because it's just the type of technology, it requires many more smaller antennas in a network. So the honeycombs on that map get much, much smaller. And so you need more antennas to cover all those honeycombs.
I've got one more question, okay, Mr. Arnold. The balloon test you did on March 22nd, was that in site 2 or 3? I know they're only a few feet apart, but.
That was site 2. So correct, we did 2 balloon flies. We did the original site and then site 2. Because that fly was done at the end of the winter, the APA wanted to have their wetland specialists come out after the snow melt to really define what that wet area that they observed through the snow was. The shift that we had to do between location 2 and location 3 was so small that they were able to generate the simulations using computer simulations. So we didn't physically need to do a 3rd balloon fly. The software and the computer simulation technology that they have to aid in the assistance of the simulations was able to accommodate for that shift between location 2 and location 3.
So you were right.
On this diagram, you can see Ms. Baker's home, Sampson home, the original tower location, which was proposed last year. The second tower location down here, the wet area, they can reference the APA was concerned about is generally right in here. So they asked us to bump it out a little bit, so it was moved 200 feet over to here. So that's why the balloon flies were done from this area. So moving it a couple hundred feet really has no appreciable change on the visuals. But it does show in the before and after in your visual assessment here, you'll see where, as was pointed out, well, if you're dropping the tower 20 feet, then the next space down below those 2 balloons should be where the tower is. Not if we moved it 200 feet. Then, so the new arrows you see in your visuals are where the actual new tower, the most latest, greatest tower location is going to be right there, which is why it doesn't exactly perfectly line up with the balloons that were formed.
Can I ask? Is there anywhere on this piece of property we can put the cell phone tower and have it be compliance?
No.
No.
No, because you can't get to 500 feet from Ms. Baker's house.
So it's like it's a totally non-compliant lot for what we're doing, right?
Correct. We evaluated multiple locations after the first one within the Donner Baker property to meet every scenario, running every distance we could.
I'm just looking at like the big circle while we're here zoning. There's no place really on this piece of property that tower can go. That's just what I'm saying. I know, that's what I'm circling back to. I mean, we can move it 3 feet this way, 3 feet that way, 100 feet, no matter where we move it. On that piece of property,
It'll be a variance.
yeah. So,
Ms. Vandersee, I think, was next.
Refresh my memory, how many feet between site 2 and site 3?
The shift between 2 and 3.
Yes.
I don't want to misquote, 60 feet probably.
Okay, so when I moved onto my property 60 feet to take a picture of the balloons, I was actually somewhat recreating that. Okay, second, that was before. At the first AT&T meeting, we were told the construction would take 2 to 4 weeks. And then at a subsequent meeting, the attorney kind of begrudgingly admitted it actually would take 6 to 8 weeks. Which one is it? Then I'm leading into something else.
I think it depends upon what they hit. If they hit the bedrock and they need to redesign they need to put a blasting plant in place.
That would all be before construction though. That would all be before construction, because I would have that information before they actually started.
Right.
Obviously, construction, I mean, anyone that deals with construction, you have a forecasted timeline. And you know, I know you're dealing with any contractor, they always go over. The
Okay.
road is relatively short, considering how some of the other roads that we build that are much longer. But it is a little bit more difficult because we do have, you know, some, you know, elevation, you know, to deal with.
So anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks, basically, it could fit into that. Okay, my point is, if everything goes according to what timeline you have in your head as far as approvals, okay, let's go with that. When would construction start? Because myself, the Sampsons, and all the neighbors have every right to peacefully enjoy their property. It's in my deed that I should do that. It's, I believe, somewhere in some town thing somewhere I read. I don't want to listen to construction for up to 8 weeks in the summer when I'm outside trying to enjoy myself. So what is your best case scenario timeline when all this will occur?
Well, the next step at the town level is this board has to make a decision.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about, I'm sorry, I should be addressing that to AT&T. I'm sure they have some sort of best case timeline in their head as to when all this
And
can
the
start.
next step at the town level is planning board site plan approval, that process.
So possibly,
There'll be a public hearing for that, so I mean, realistically, it couldn't even start until
winter.
the end of August.
And after the approvals from the town, if they're given, there's also the APA.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah, I mean,
how much after that?
once I get the town permit, I've got to finalize my APA permit, which takes, their law requirement makes them give it to me within 90 days. So they have up to 90 days to issue the permit. And believe me, they take every last minute of that 90 days.
Yeah. So this could not occur until even late fall or winter.
Now, I know one of you brought up the species. I'm not sure which one of you about what species, you know, bird and things like that. We do a full environmental assessment. We do what we call a phase 1. And that does identify all habitats that would be effective. It does limit when our build times are. For instance, in some of the habitats, you get the long-eared bats. And for instance, if that is shown in this particular area, we could only do work between November and March, you know, things like that. So there are a lot of restrictions that play out based on those environmental reports.
Because there's broadwing hawks, there's pileated woodpeckers, and I have seen several times the bald eagle flying over my house. I think they're after Richie Selmar's chickens. So there is a concern about that because they are all either protected or on the migratory birds.
Mr. Arnold, I think we're back to you.
Okay, and I got another question there. They have to be notified in writing by August 29th. Is that correct? after this is approved or denied?
You know that timeline? off the top of your head?
The shot clock is August 29th. We're supposed to, all boards are supposed to make it by August 29th.
We can't really drag this out forever like we did the first time. Like, make a decision.
It can be extended again by mutual agreement of both parties, but at this point, the shot clock date is August 29th.
Okay. Back to the 5G thing, from what I understand, the information I get operates on a faster frequency. Faster than what the old system, the 4G is. Also, the shorter wavelength. Little towers, the little boxes they're talking about are called small cell. And the distance I get is 500 feet. Every 500 feet, there has to be one of those boxes to transmit that along. Is that correct?
It's a short distance. It's
500
not
feet.
miles.
Well, 500 feet is what I found.
And that's why 5G is not coming to here, this area anytime soon.
Well, we'll see, but that's every 500 feet, there's gonna be some kind of box there. And then back to the health thing, what's that faster frequency do to your health? Studies have been done on that because it's new, just like the outdated FCC thing was 25 years ago.
The FCC has exclusive jurisdiction over all that. Over all matters of environmental health.
Brought up here. Okay. Any more questions, guys?
No, I'm pretty well set now.
Okay. Yeah. I'm good. Okay. Pardon me? Oh, yes, thank you. I think everybody's spoken, so I'll close the public hearing. It's the first time I've ever done that twice in the same meeting. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything to add?
Thank you for asking. No, I think everything's been covered, and thank you for hearing my comments.
I still feel like I want to sleep on this.
I'm pretty well set.
But our mission here is to either approve or not to approve the variance. Is that the part that you have to sleep on, or the whole thing? I mean,
so much of what we've been discussing, we talk about not discussing it, but then we discuss it, and then after we discuss it, we say,
I'm not
it doesn't
allowed to.
mean anything.
Right.
You know, we're like, shoo, shoo, shoo.
Yeah, yeah.
we need to focus on the variance that we're here to either approve or disapprove.
Agreed.
Do you have any suggestions, sir?
In which area?
Whether we should proceed tonight or not?
My understanding coming into tonight's meeting, you set up 3 meetings. The first was the presentation for 18B. The second meeting tonight was the public hearing. And then you had the third scheduled for second Thursday in August to make your final determination. Is that correct, Karen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think you probably should stick to that schedule rather than jump the gun.
Yeah.
You had that plan already in place and it's been advertised. So I think you
Yeah,
got all the data now, you got all the information.
I was just gonna say, I think
Close the public hearing, I would adjourn the meeting and cogitate over what you have and come back in August.
I would.
If you want to converse more on the record, certainly do that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with town council because I think that kind of tentative schedule is out there. You know.
anything change between now and then? Like, can they present more or present less?
My advice to the board would be to allow anyone in the public and anyone from AT&T or the universe, if they want to present more data, we receive it. If it's a reversible error and some litigation, that's up to the courts. But I always err on the side of information. I never restrict input information from it. So this has been going on for quite some time. And you've heard the expert talk about the optimal location. And whether or not they've met that standard is your decision to make based upon the data presented.
Any more discussion about that? We need to make a motion to.
Just to during the meeting, if that's your inclination. Yeah. But if you're inclined to move forward to make a decision, then you know what to do next. This is entirely your decision, not my opinion, but that's your decision.
I'm just gonna ask you, I prefer to stick to that schedule. Yeah.
Is there any downside to us making a decision tonight, or are we sticking with the schedule and go with the flow?
Well, is there a downside in terms of what, a reversible error if you procedurally amend the schedule?
If we, because we published, haven't we published that we're gonna do the public hearing tonight and then make a decision at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Is there
That's
a
what's been put
downside?
in all of the emails. That was the intention in all of the emails and in the discussion at the last meeting as well.
From my viewpoint, if there's a downside, it would be if we voted on it tonight, somebody came back and said, you said you weren't gonna vote on it until August. That could cause us problems, I think.
Well, procedurally, I think everyone in the room, both AT&T and the public, expected to come into a public hearing and not have a vote. That's the way it was published. So I think the expectations are fulfilled and you should continue on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
That's a pretty logical, good way to put it.
We have our council for a reason. And I think we should.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Right, who made the motion?
Aye.